In this video, I will explain to you what the migration period was and how it shaped Europe from the 4th to the 6th century. You will learn which peoples moved, why they did so, and what effects these migrations had on the Roman Empire and European history. The migration period was a long era in European history, roughly from the 4th to the 6th century AD. During this time, many different groups of people, often entire peoples, moved across Europe. They left their old settlements and sought new places to live. These movements fundamentally changed the map and society of Europe. It was not a single, large migration, but many different waves over a long period. The migration period lasted several hundred years and did not proceed at the same speed or intensity everywhere. Some areas were more affected by immigration or passage than others. It was a time of great uncertainty, but also of cultural exchange. The Roman Empire, the great empire of the time, was strongly influenced and changed by these movements. Ultimately, the migration period contributed to the fall of the Western Roman Empire. There was not just one reason for the migrations, but usually a bundle of causes. Often peoples were driven out of their homelands by other warlike groups. Sometimes climate changes played a role, leading to poor harvests or lack of pasture. The search for better living conditions or fertile land was also an important motivation. Some groups were attracted by the wealth of the Roman Empire. Imagine the weather becoming colder or drier over a long period. That is exactly what happened in some regions during the migration period, known as a climate deterioration. Poorer harvests and less grazing land for livestock may have forced peoples to look for new habitats. Climate changes were probably one of several reasons for the migrations. It was like a domino effect, where one change triggered the next. An important trigger for the migration of many Germanic peoples was the appearance of the Huns. The Huns were a horse-riding people from Central Asia who advanced into Europe in the late 4th century. They were feared as extremely warlike and successful. Many peoples living east of the Roman Empire fled westward from the Huns. This pressure set off a chain reaction of population movements. At the time of the migration period, the Roman Empire was no longer as strong as before. Internal power struggles, economic problems, and constant wars had weakened the empire. Its long borders were difficult to defend, and the army was often overwhelmed. This weakness made it easier for migrating peoples to enter the empire or settle there. Sometimes the Romans even took peoples in as allies to secure the borders. The term Germans is a collective name used by the Romans for many different peoples living north and east of their empire. This included groups such as the Goths, Vandals, Franks, Saxons, and many more. These peoples had different languages, cultures, and traditions, even if they shared some similarities. They were not a unified nation, but consisted of many independent tribes and groups. The Goths were one of the best-known Germanic peoples of the migration period. They later split into two main groups: the Visigoths, Western Goths, and the Ostrogoths, Eastern Goths. They originally probably came from Scandinavia and settled for a long time near the Black Sea. The pressure from the Huns forced many Goths to seek protection within the Roman Empire. Their history is closely linked with the fate of Rome. Around 376, large groups of Visigoths asked the Romans for permission to cross the Danube and settle within the Roman Empire. They fled from the Huns and hoped for protection and land. The Roman Emperor Valens allowed this, but the supply of the refugees was poorly organized. The Romans often treated the Goths badly and exploited them, which soon led to conflicts. Tensions between the Visigoths and Romans escalated quickly. In 378, the Battle of Adrianople, today Edirne in Turkey, took place. The Gothic warriors decisively defeated the Roman army, and even Emperor Valens fell in the battle. This defeat was a shock for the Roman Empire. It showed that the so-called barbarians could be militarily equal to the Roman legions. After Adrianople, the Visigoths remained an unsettled force within the empire. Under their leader Alaric, they ravaged through Greece and Italy. Alaric demanded land for his people and high offices for himself from the Romans. When his demands were not fully met, he marched on Rome. This was a turning point in relations between Rome and the Germanic peoples. In 410, the Visigoths under Alaric conquered and plundered the city of Rome. Although Rome was no longer the capital of the Western Roman Empire, that was Ravenna, the city held enormous symbolic significance. The plundering of Rome by barbarians shocked people throughout the empire and beyond. It was a sign that the old order was shaking. After Alaric's death, the Visigoths moved further west. They eventually settled in southern Gaul, today southern France, and later on the Iberian Peninsula, today Spain and Portugal. There they founded their own kingdom, which lasted several centuries. This Visigothic kingdom was one of the first large Germanic successor states on the territory of the former Western Roman Empire. The Ostrogoths were long under Hun rule. After the collapse of the Hun Empire in the mid-5th century, they regained independence. Under their king Theodoric, they moved into Italy at the end of the 5th century on behalf of the Eastern Roman Emperor. They were meant to end the rule of Odoacer, who had deposed the last Western Roman Emperor. Theodoric defeated Odoacer and established an Ostrogothic kingdom in Italy, with Ravenna as its capital. He became known as Theodoric the Great and ruled wisely over Goths and Romans. His reign brought Italy a time of relative peace and prosperity. He tried to preserve Roman administration and culture while blending it with Gothic traditions. The Vandals were another Germanic people who originally settled in today's Poland and Silesia. Along with other groups like the Alans and Suebi, they crossed the frozen Rhine on New Year's Eve 406. This Rhine crossing opened Gaul to Germanic invasions and migrations. The Roman border defenses had collapsed at this point. After ravaging through Gaul and Spain, the Vandals, under their king Genseric, crossed into North Africa. They conquered the rich Roman province of Africa, today Tunisia and parts of Algeria, and made Carthage their capital. From there, they built a naval power and controlled the western Mediterranean. Their kingdom in Africa lasted nearly a century. In 455, the Vandals under Genseric exploited internal power struggles in Rome. They sailed with their fleet to Italy and plundered Rome more thoroughly and longer than the Visigoths had 45 years earlier. They stole great treasures and kidnapped many people, including the widow of the emperor and her daughters. This vandalism gave rise to the modern term vandalism for senseless destruction. The Huns were nomads from Asia, known as excellent horsemen and archers. Their sudden appearance in Eastern Europe caused great fear and set many other peoples in motion. They formed a large empire that included many subjugated peoples. Their sphere of influence at times stretched from Central Asia to Central Europe. The most famous leader of the Huns was Attila, who came to power around 434. Under his rule, the Hun Empire reached its greatest extent and power. Attila launched large military campaigns against the Eastern and Western Roman empires and demanded huge tributes. Due to his brutality and destruction, he was often called the Scourge of God in Christian Europe. Attila's empire was not a fixed state, but a loose confederation of many different peoples subdued by the Huns. The Huns themselves were probably only a relatively small elite. The empire was held together by Attila's military successes and personality. It relied on constant warfare and loot to maintain loyalty. In 451, Attila marched with a huge army into Gaul. There he faced an army made up of Romans and their Germanic allies, including Visigoths and Franks. On the Catalonian plains, near Châlons-en-Champagne or Troyes in France, one of the greatest battles of late antiquity took place. Attila was stopped, but managed to withdraw with his army. Only 2 years after the battle on the Catalonian plains, Attila died suddenly in 453. After his death, power struggles broke out among his sons. The subdued peoples rebelled against Hun rule and defeated them at the Battle of Nedao, 454. The great Hun Empire quickly disintegrated, and the Huns disappeared as an independent people from European history. The Franks were a group of Germanic tribes originally settled along the Lower Rhine. During the 4th and 5th centuries, they slowly expanded their influence south and west into Roman Gaul. They often served the Romans as mercenaries or allies. After the collapse of Roman rule in Gaul, they became the dominant power in the region. A decisive leader of the Franks was Clovis I from the Merovingian dynasty. At the end of the 5th century, he defeated the last Roman governor in Gaul and other Germanic rivals like the Alemanni and Visigoths. Clovis united the various Frankish tribes under his rule. His conversion to Catholic Christianity was an important step that secured him the support of the Gallo-Roman population. Under Clovis and his successors, the Frankish kingdom arose, covering large parts of today's France, Germany, and the Benelux countries. This kingdom is considered one of the most important predecessors of modern France and Germany. The Merovingian dynasty ruled until the 8th century. The Frankish kingdom was one of the most stable and long-lasting Germanic successor states. While many peoples migrated on the mainland, others took to the sea. Groups like the Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, who lived on the coasts of the North Sea, today northern Germany and Denmark, began crossing to Britain in the 5th century. Roman rule in Britain had already collapsed by then. These seafarers sought new settlement lands. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes gradually conquered large parts of today's England, displacing or subjugating the Celtic population, Britons. They founded several small kingdoms, often at war with each other. This period is known as the era of the Anglo-Saxon Heptarchy, 7 kingdoms. From the Angles and Saxons later emerged the Anglo-Saxon people, and the land became known as England, land of the Angles. The Western Roman Empire had grown weaker due to internal problems and the migration period. In 476, the Germanic military leader Odoacer deposed the last Western Roman emperor, the young Romulus Augustulus. Odoacer sent the imperial insignia to Constantinople to the Eastern Roman emperor and made himself king of Italy. This event is often seen as the formal end of the Western Roman Empire. The migration period changed Europe forever. Instead of the large Western Roman Empire, many new Germanic kingdoms arose. Populations mixed and new languages and cultures developed. Cities lost importance while rural life became more central. Although often called a chaotic time, the migration period also laid the foundation for the peoples and states of medieval and modern Europe.